Bring in our panel of party commentators now this week, joined by Susan Smith, a Liberal commentator. Tim Powers is a Conservative commentator, and Kiavash Najafi is an NDP commentator. Good to see you all again. Susan, the Prime Minister has been cleared of accusations of conflict of interest by the Ethics Commissioner today, who says there was a strong appearance of conflict involving the Prime Minister, but that the Act doesn't include appearance of conflict in the definition of conflict of interest. So Justin Trudeau has already acknowledged he should have recused himself from the WE decision. So how much of a win is this for the Prime Minister today?
I don't know if you want to call it a win, because it means we're talking about it again, but the Ethics Commissioner has investigated. The Ethics Commissioner says there's no ethics violation, so the story should be over. Unfortunately, probably won't be over because the Conservatives and the NDP and the opposition will have a heyday with it, but the Prime Minister was cleared. And it's important to remember the program, or the reason that what was being talked about was about a program trying to get youth summer employment when jobs were cancelled. So the Ethics Commissioner looked into it. It should put the matter to rest as far as the Prime Minister is concerned. Bill Morneau got tapped by the Ethics Commissioner on it. He's no longer in Cabinet. He apologized. Both men apologized at the beginning for any appearances of any kind of conflict, but the Ethics Commissioner's ruled. It's over. Should be.
Tim, the Finance Minister who quit over this is long gone, but the Ethics Commissioner, Susan points out, says Bill Morneau broke the rules repeatedly, in fact. How does the Prime Minister and his government emerge from this ethics investigation today?
Well, I don't think they should have a ticker tape parade marshaled by the Kielburger brothers. That's probably not the right approach, Peter. Look, Susan's right. It's going to stay in the news. Yes, the Prime Minister himself is cleared, but Bill Morneau wasn't. Bill Morneau, yes, has gone for politics, but the Conservatives, the New Democrats, the Greens, the Bloc will all point and say there's a pattern of behavior here. Yes, he got off this time, but what about the core of the government? So whenever there's an ethics issue like this, and there's still elements to the story, opposition parties don't give up on it at all.
Kiavash, the other thing that's underlined by the Ethics Commissioner's findings today is that some weaknesses in the ethics legislation. That's clearly noted again today. But what are your thoughts on what he has concluded?
Susan made an interesting point. At the end of the day, this was about finding jobs, summer jobs for the students who had been impacted by pandemic, and I think they are the real victims of this whole process. At the end of the day, those jobs did not get realized. $912 million that was supposed to go toward that did not go that way because folks who were friendly with the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister did not manage to get the contract they wanted. And I think that's the part that I think people are going to start paying more attention to, that, if it's not Liberal friends getting the contract, apparently the service does not get delivered.
All right. Let's switch gears a bit. The battle between Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau is back in the news again today, Susan. Doug Ford taking another shot at the Prime Minister over what he says are lax border and travel rules during the pandemic. But what was also interesting is Doug Ford has been mostly invisible for the past month, and that's a long stretch from his almost daily news conferences dealing with the pandemic response. What's behind the strategy of making the Premier less visible?
Well, he's not popular at the moment, and it's best to keep him out of the limelight. People aren't buying what Doug Ford is selling at the moment when it comes to his attacks on the government of Canada. What people want are the vaccines in their arms. That's improving. People are frustrated by the third lockdown that's been extended yet again, and they blame it on Doug Ford. They blame it. He was invisible during the report on the long-term care homes. So there's been a lot of negativity around the Premier's handling of the pandemic, and that's why they're keeping him under wraps. And that's exactly what trying to pick a fight with Trudeau over borders is about. Everybody who's paying attention knows that that is not the key source of spread in Ontario. It's workers in factories, essential workers who are having to work and can't stay home, can't isolate when they're unwell. And so Ford is deflecting, and he's trying to pin the blame somewhere else instead of on him, where it has been squarely focused.
Tim, let me hear you on this. Challenges for the Premier in Ontario and how he, if he can, move on from them.
Well, I think they're both playing the blame game, the Prime Minister and the Premier, because they're both sensitive to the fact that they don't want to be targeted by the public as being responsible for elements of the pandemic, which they're going to be anyway. Doug Ford wants to start to focus on his election campaign a year from now, and Justin Trudeau's already in the hyper mode, preparing for his probably in 3 months. So this is a normal fight between the two of them. The most frustrating thing, though, as a citizen, and I think even with all of our partisan inclinations, we could all agree, can you both stop it? We're not done yet. We're not through the pandemic. There's still, everybody needs to get vaccinated once, if not twice. So they both have to be careful for some blowback here from their own party and from the broader public who just want to get through this pandemic and don't want to see self-interested politicians acting in a traditional self-interested way.
All right, Kiavash, what do you think?
Completely agree with Tim. Ford would be dreaming in Technicolor, thinking that he can get out of the mess that he's created by just blaming Justin Trudeau and potential shortcomings at the border for the experience that we've had in Ontario. But at the same time, I think Justin Trudeau would be making a mistake by not pushing back on what he sees there. That said, I agree with what Tim is saying. The best pushback for Justin Trudeau would be to deliver the vaccines and get us closer to full inoculation rather than try to have a this kind of a match with the premier. When you wrestle with a pig, you both get dirt on yourselves, and I don't think it's going to be good for Justin Trudeau to have this wrestling match with Doug Ford.
I'll leave that just the way you said it there, I guess. Let's move out west though, because we've got a couple of minutes left, so quick answers here. But Susan, look, Jason Kenney's got his own problems with open rebellion now from his caucus over his leadership style, his tighter pandemic restrictions. The caucus chair is calling for, who just resigns, calling for Jason Kenney to quit, step down as the premier. How did the Kenney Express get off the rails like this?
I don't know. I mean, this is a bad news scenario for Jason Kenney. There's no question about it. I think it got off the rails, Peter, because he was more worried about his caucus than he was worried about managing the pandemic. And the problem is, in trying to keep his caucus happy, he made the rest of Alberta upset and the rest of Alberta sick or sicker, right? Because the COVID numbers are so bad there. So what Kenney should have done was worried less about politics at the beginning and focused entirely on how to keep the COVID numbers managed in the province. But he was dealing with this flank. 18 members signed a letter in April saying they're resisting the restrictions, and he let that slide. And he let the rodeo slide, and he let other things slide. And so now he's in trouble because nobody's happy on either side, and members within his caucus are openly revolting. And a caucus stepping down is a really big deal.
What does he do here, Tim?
What does he need to do? Well, he might want to take that ravenous pack of caucus members on a trip somewhere and see if they can find some other game to focus on, Peter. But Jason Kenney's not unused to this. He was, in fact, a ravenous caucus member at one point when he was a member of the Federal Conservative Party. But the serious answer to the question, he's got to find a way to connect with them and the people they represent, which is rural Alberta by and large. And in rural Alberta, as it is in many parts of Canada, the rural experience with COVID is different. And Jason Kenney perhaps should have just been very consistent all the way along instead of trying to balance, and I agree with Susan on this, the different political interest in his own caucus so that they wouldn't have a bigger demarcation of interests. 30
seconds for you, Kiavash, to finish this up tonight.
I think the political culture in Alberta, at least for the Conservatives, is still very much relying on the hegemony of the Conservative movement in Alberta and doesn't understand that politics doesn't just happen within the confines of the caucus and the party leadership, but that there is a threat of losing a future election. I think Notley is setting herself up for winning. I think more and more Albertans who did not vote for her and everybody who did vote for her in the previous election is coming to the conclusion that they would have been better off with Notley if they had elected her. The fact that Jason Kenney is going to be focused on internal politics rather than helping Albertans get through the worst crisis in North America right now, they have the worst numbers in North America, is just going to add to the sense that this caucus and this party and this premier are not on the side of people and they're more focused with the bottom line of their own party.
All right. Thank you all for your perspectives tonight. We'll talk again. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Peter.